Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Brittany and Bria Smith apparently were friends of Monet Newton, and they don't want Monet Newton to be vilified, especially for anything she didn't do. And they don't want Monet Newton to be insulted, referred to by certain names and epithets that we unabashedly do apply to women who forsake brothers to go get a Brad, a colonizer, and then blame brothers. I myself do not celebrate her passing. I'm not happy about that. It's murder. The biogenetic background of somebody that you would choose to marry does not necessitate murder. In my own frame of reference, the worst she may have done is fornication if she lay down with him, and fornication for the unmarried does not come with a death penalty, even in my religion. I don't say anything because of a grudge against Monet Newton. Some brothers in my audience are going to have an actual grudge against her. Some will not. Many will simply say, it's just not our problem. And I want to reiterate this to the Smiths and to any Newtons who may hear this. I don't comment on this because I'm glad that somebody did her in. Dude was a damn animal. Unless somebody else did them both in and put the gun in his hand to make it look like it was him, dude was an animal. I say what I said about this whole situation because what I prioritize at this point is that black men do not get blamed for what Chase Cooper did to her. So, between my audience members and the Smiths who have commented to defend Monet Newton, which is understandable if she was your relative or your friend, you all can choose to argue with each other or not. Most of you brethren in the audience are not going to be willing to argue and go back and forth. And I'm sure that Brittany and Bria Smith are not going to be willing to just stand by if anybody does, in fact, bash her when she didn't do or say anything to harm anyone, and she was not an enemy to black men, and didn't blame black men for anything that a brother ain't do. I would say that that's very fair. Most people don't just walk around looking for grudges anyway. Most human beings don't do that. But I'm going to point out again that unfortunately, black men and black women are in a gender war. White men and white women are in one too. But they'll fight their own gender war. Now, that's something I might actually celebrate sometimes. I don't find time to celebrate that, but if I were going to rejoice at something, it would be that. It's about effing time. Go ahead, go at each other's throats. Make sure the whole world sees it. But I don't find time to rejoice. I get busy with many other things. I've got my own job to do to earn my money. I have tried to find a way to run certain errands that I can't manage to get done. Hell, I'm so far behind that for those of you who know my number, I haven't checked WhatsApp in weeks because I can't catch up. But nonetheless, I'll state this about Monet. I'm not celebrating her passing. Hell, I'm not even neutral about it. I'm not even one of those who feels nothing. I probably need to get to that point, but I haven't gotten to the point where I hear about somebody being taken out for a non-capital, for anything other than a capital crime themselves. And then I just feel nothing. No, it did bother me as an act of murder, period. Yeah, it bothered me. Absolutely, it did. She had no social media post that I knew of in which, unlike somebody named Robinson, in which she would have said, "I tried with you coloreds." That was a social media post of another lady that just turned up, gone. Just a cadaver. Nothing else. No soul in there. You get the idea. And she had a post talk about, "I tried with you coloreds." That's what that was. I didn't see that with Monet Newton. I knew when I first heard about it that this is probably not going to be the same thing. But I also knew that divestors were going to intentionally see. I never stated that Monet Newton was definitely a divestor. Never did. But I knew that what was going to happen is that actual divestors were going to either latch on to this to blame black men, or they were going to cover it up and not say anything. The whole time we've been sitting up and trying to tell sisters in general, these brads are dangerous for you, like what AC says. Becky might be dangerous for brothers. I think she is. Brad is more dangerous. He doesn't call 911 and make up a lie. None of that. He just, it's nothing like that. He just decides, you know what? I'm going to do a number on her. I'll do it myself. Who does she think she is to talk back to me and have a different opinion? And, you know, I know how to navigate and how to deal with those folks. And I understand that you do not spend an inordinate amount of time with any of them, be they men or women. I know that. If y'all cool, you spend about an hour with them and then you give them their space. I know that. I've known it since I was a child. Say about middle school, I've known even when you're friends and you're playing with them. I've learned you don't sleep over at their houses overnight. Spend the night. You don't do that with them. I learned that. Understood it intuitively. Because there are orders that are going to come under pressure from their people if they get too close to you. Maybe it's different in the North. I grew up in not only the South, but the deep South. They could come under pressure. They could be scrutinized for, they could be well scrutinized for that. Being too close to one of us. I know that when you go into the Southwest, it doesn't change much. I also understand that if Miss Newton had nothing against us and she really was neutral and colorblind and all of that, then that makes this even worse. And this further proves our point, which is why I brought her up. I didn't bring up the demonizer. I know what my audience is like. My audience is a variety. And we don't control each other. The audience doesn't control what I record and upload, and I don't control what they say about it. We have certain predictions we can accurately make. But neither one of us exerts control over the other. But what I can say is that one of the reasons I brought her up was because, damn, you know what came about? Exactly this. What I suspected now has been confirmed for me by Brittany and Bria Smith. Thank you for that information. Now, this further proves my point. She didn't have to down black men For Brad to turn around and say, oh, really? You gonna leave now that now that you graduated and you've gotten your degree and you moving on with your life, you gonna leave me? I want that tax. Because I did you a favor. That proves it even more. She didn't have to signal to him that she was a traitor. All she had to do was be neutral about all of it. And if she wasn't dissing brothers and she was really neutral, then she probably looked at her standards for brothers, which I assume would be somewhat hypergamous. He's got to be on her level, which is fine. It's an option. And she probably looked at him and said, you know what? He's not on my level, so he doesn't get a pass either. So the pass that she did not give him for being white was a reason for him to turn around and do what he did. Not a justification. I'm saying in his mind, it was a reason. Because he did her a favor as far as he can see it, as far as he can understand it. That's white supremacy for you. And that's why I say they dangerous. That's why I've been telling black folks, especially black women, if you don't mess with them, that don't make you a racist. That makes, see, you reacting to racism by being extra safe and extra cautious is not racism. It's not reverse racism. And don't let them fool you like that. Don't let them try to get in your head like that. I've had to tell black folk that if you want to keep a distance so that you don't wind up being one of their victims, that doesn't make you a racist. You're trying to sidestep and avoid racism. Their differentiated treatment of you is going to be racism, even if it's not with hatred. You'll see that here sometimes. You'll see men here that if they are willing to marry a black woman, they're not going to pay the same dowry. They're not trying to lower the dowries because that's a good marital practice in general for society. They're trying to lower the dowry because he's not black and she is. That's how they do it. You have a concept of some of the elder Saudis here, a concept of damaging the race. Can you imagine? That sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? I had a student kind of pro-black. He wasn't black. He's kind of pro-black. And he had a black voice, if you will, speaking and singing. And dude said to me one time that he was tired of some of the elders in his family because some of his aunts and uncles were looking at some of the youngsters who would be willing to marry a Muslim from the Philippines or from Malaysia, Indonesia. And they looked at these younger ones and said, that's disgusting. Why would you damage the race? And the phrase damage the race, or the command form for the verb damage the race, would be damar al-arq. They have that in Arabic. Of course, you could put the words damage and race together to express the same concept. But what I'm saying is that it's an already used phrase. So when I talk to some of these non-black Saudis about my racial attitudes, I say to them, look, my daughters can't marry men from you that say that you're white. That's not because I'm racist. It's because y'all are. You see, if I tell you that I'm black and therefore my daughters are black, and you all realize my daughters got black blood, and you all decide you don't want to marry them, you would sit up and say, well, it's not racism. We're just trying to protect the race. We're not trying to damage the race. Okay, well, now when I sit up and I say that I just want my daughters to be treated fairly, and therefore if you're out, then you want to sit up and tell me I'm racist. That's because you think that racism is normal. We don't even agree on what racism is. And therein And these are, like I said, these Arabs are not violent. I mean, they can be, but violence is not something they go straight to, especially with regards to marriage, because it's too private a matter. They don't resort to violence behind marriage. If the son marries a black woman and the family doesn't agree, they don't even hate the woman. They just disown the son. No hatred for the woman. They look at her and say, there's nothing to blame her for. He's the one we told not to marry, and he did it. He's out the family. That's how they do it. I'm telling you, they're not playing when it comes to this idea of their pedigree. Big cities, not so much, but you get in these smaller towns, that's how they are, and they're not violent. Now you start taking a group of people, a group of men who are violent, and we know this. They were violent anyway, and then they introduced racial ideas to justify even worse violence. And what I'm sitting up here and saying now is that that's how bad it gets. But again, I state once more before I close this out. Again, my main concern is not to bash her. It's not that. I don't think she made a smart choice. But like you all said, she was neutral about it. So it wasn't hateful. I don't take her as an enemy. But what it is, again, is if whether it is about race neutrality or it's about I just don't want no black men no more and I think that white man's better. Whatever the reason is, once a woman of African origin gets with that Brad, gets with a man of that origin, we can't protect her. It's out of our hands. And so therefore, I don't want black men to be blamed. And now, Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Smith, Bria Smith and Brittany Smith, maybe you know what a divestor is, maybe you haven't heard. But there is a group, and they're referred to as that, and I don't know what they call themselves, but we call them divestors, and they're openly out there saying that black men should be left alone, physically harmed, forcefully incarcerated, and even shot to death. And they're encouraging male officers from other races to do this. They're in some social media spaces, and they have not been shut down for saying these things. And they're going to find a way, if they hear about her case, they're going to find a way to blame us for what happened, what Chase Cooper did to her. Or the other option is that they're going to not find a way, and then they're going to completely try to cover it up as if nobody ever did this to her. And they would try to redirect attention that you might even want to this, directed to this crime. They may try to direct attention away from this crime because they may come knocking on your door, be like, girl, shut up. We trying to get these white men's and you messing it up. We're trying to leave these N-words, these dusty N-words for these white men and you messing it up. And it's okay for them to do it, but if they do come to you with this debate, they're going to come to you with this debate because what they're going to be saying to you is we want all of us, you, me, her, and her over there, to all collectively leave brothers. Not only leave brothers, but leave them specifically for the ones who oppressed everybody else on the planet. And not only that, but we want their help in getting rid of black men. And if you listen to them enough, well, Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Smith, if you listen to them enough and you do what they say, they will turn you against your male relatives. You may just not have known that this group exists, but what I'm talking about is them not being able to blame us because they try to do that. And I really just want that to not be the case. I want that effort of theirs to fail. I did not record this to malign Monet Newton. Like you said, I don't know her. You do, and I don't. But I don't want brothers being blamed for it. And I'm not in a position to tell the men in my audience that they're required to grieve or forbidden from grieving for her death. I'm not in a position to tell them how to feel about it. Men don't usually have that. understanding that we can tell each other how to feel about something. That was the real motive behind this. Yeah. My heart goes out to you all. If I tried not to feel anything, I would have failed. My heart does go out to you all as survivors. I do hope that God makes it easier for those of you that are left behind having to deal with this. And I am grateful for one thing about this, and that is that Chase Cooper did not wind up getting away with this unless, and that's if he's the one that actually did it, unless this is a major setup on the part of somebody else, which I seriously doubt. I'm glad that Cooper didn't get away with it. I hope that what I've said benefits and that it was fair. I know it's harsh, but I do hope it was fair. Thanks for listening. As always, black heart, black mind, blackout. Assalamu alaikum and black heterosexual non-select male power because they don't like it in black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day. Thanks for flying with us again here on Jet Black Airways with the phrase Jet Black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice forever.